Hello and welcome everyone to the CFL Dynasty League podcast. I am your host and commissioner, Steve. It is week 8. Welcome to the special halfway season recap show. That's right, special title for this podcast episode. We're going to go through and review some in-depth statistics and interesting facts. Now that we are officially at the halfway point of the regular season, we still have our regular weekly overview from week 7. A lot of moves and shaking in the rankings because of last week. We got teams a lot closer to each other in the standings now. We'll go through our waiver recap as well. There was a couple moves made during the week so far. A couple of waiver pickups as well. Oh yeah, having a look at the pool recap, wouldn't you know it, the Bozo hit again. We're on track for a hat trick in only our 5th week. I cannot believe how great you guys have been at picking Bozo bets. If only you could pick your starting lineups as good as that. We'll also go through our commish locks. Stu had himself a week. I hope you were following along. It probably would have cashed a couple. And we'll go through what he has to share with us this coming week as well. And oh yeah, we'll get into week 8. We already have some matchups that are well underway thanks to a beauty Thursday night game. We'll see if that's impacted any of the lines across the matchups this week so far. And I can't wait to get into it. Like I said, going to be a little bit of a lengthier episode this time, but I hope you guys find the information very fun and engaging as always. But before we get into that, let's kick things off with our fantasy review. All right, and let's get right into it, kicking things off with the game of the week. Holy man, was this one exciting and down to the wire? It was. BK Whopper at the Gronks. Implications for the U.S. division all over the outcome of this game. And it was the Gronks coming through really late Monday night. They squeak by and run out to the 9-point win over BK Whopper, put some separation between the two teams. Gronks moving to 6-1, BK Whopper dropping to 4-3 in this could be U.S. title deciding game so early in the season. Schedule's favorable for the Gronks for the rest of the year. We'll see if BK Whoppers can make up that ground. But into the game itself, Josh Allen and Jordan Love did not let BK Whopper down in this one. 30 points from Josh Allen. Got a new toy to play with in Amari Cooper. We can talk about that one later. Jordan Love putting up 26.5 as well. And then Aaron Jones and Kyron Williams, almost 20 points each. Little bit of a letdown from Jordan Addison, Stephon Diggs. I mean, Houston kind of had a stinker all over the board. Jaden Reed, only 2 points. So the bottom of BK's lineup, some boom-bust players, Xavier Worthy included. Also a 0 from Luke Farrell and Greg Zuerlein, a blocked kick. This was the Monday night game too, -1 points, although it turns out with the 9-point win, that was not the difference. But over on the Gronk side, here's what really powered them through. So 47 points from Lamar, and Kyler was going on the Monday as well, 22.7. They started with a 0 Thursday night. Cortland Sutton, they were in the hole deep. They also got 23 points from Breece Hall to help make up the victory. Nick Chubb was back in the lineup for the first time, 9.7 points. Not bad for a first game off that gruesome injury. James Cook put up a 9 as well. Tyreek Hill, well, thankfully they have Tua back, 1.8. And Christian Kirk, only 2.9 points. Dalton Schultz was a disappointment. Younghoe Koo was a disappointment. But all in all, the two quarterbacks powered Gronks to the lead right at the end of this matchup. And they are still the U.S. Division champions. Keeping in the U.S. division, Italian Stallions were taking on James. Another one that, well, it was pretty down to the wire. Stu got just enough on Monday night. James did try to make it really close. This one finished 96.45 to 92.46. So really just the 4 points difference on this one. Andy Dalton, minus 2.5 points, keeping Stu within striking distance in this match. Kirk Cousins only put up 12.5 as well. Big games from Saquon and Joe Mixon, though the running backs seem very steady for Italian Stallions. And Trey McBride, 10 points, his next highest scorer there after the QB. HM was a little bit of a disappointment. Ramondre was a big-time disappointment. We'll see what Stu does with those New England running backs. And hopefully Deontay Johnson can jump back to form for him. But obviously with Dalton having such a poor game and Malik Neighbors not quite enough to get Stu running away with the victory. But like I said, in the end, James just couldn't make up those last 4 points on the night. Henry, on his side, did the best, 24.7 points. He had Rashad White going as well, 26.1. So, I mean, there was just another touch or two from either one of those guys. Or if Mike Evans doesn't go out, well, halfway through the game almost, he got 9 points there. He was on the board early, and that was kind of it for James. Anthony Richardson, only 7.5. Kamara, 5 points. Wandale, 5 points. Deebo got sick. I think he had to go to the hospital. 0 on that one. Christian Watson and the Packers receivers were kind of disappointing. Only 1 point there too. So all in all, this was a pretty tight, exciting matchup, even though both teams did not make it to 100 points. Italian Stallions up to 4-3, still in the hunt. They're tied for second in the division, and James falling, unfortunately, to 1-6. Hildy and Hanging with Hernandez to finish off the U.S. division. It was 113-69. Justin Herbert actually had a decent game. Hildy's got Kareem Hunt running hot, waiting for Pacheco to return. And Brock Bowers, another almost 20 points, 19.3 there. Jamar Chase, 15 too. So there's some good pieces on Hildy's side of the ball. Hanging with Hernandez, only 20 from Burrow. I mean, that's where they're going to live and die if they want to maybe get another win, go to 2 wins on the season. Although with James giving them a run for the money for last place, they're maybe hoping that Joe Burrow does not go off too many more times this year. Canadian division, for the couple of matchups that we had going on here, Banditos were taking on Nav, and they fell 106-155. Jared Goff still putting up really good games, 27 points. Brock Purdy only 17.9 with this one. James Conner was trying to get him back into it. I mean, it wasn't really close at the end. Nav running away with a 50-point margin. Justin Jefferson and Terry McLaurin still getting the job done for the Banditos, though they are still in there with a shot. Maybe if it is even for that wild card seed. They're getting some players hopefully back from injury off their roster as well. Jalen Hurts on Nav's side was enough to kind of balance C.J. Stroud, only 5 points. We talked about the Texans, a bad game. Jahmyr Gibbs, though, 30 on the day, powered through with 21 from Amon-Ra. So the Lions kind of got it done there for Nav. And Njoku maybe going to have some bigger games now, 23.6, but his quarterback is going to be different. So if maybe Jameis just powers it through and Njoku is back where he was at the end of the year last year. This kept Nav in the hunt as well, only a couple games behind the league or the division leader with the win there. Working from Mahomes, White Russian was our next matchup, and maybe a bit of a surprise. White Russian storming to a win, 151-115. Geno Smith, 23, Najee, 16, Javonte, 24, Amari Cooper, 14, DK Metcalf, 17. It was just pretty solid across the board. One of the better scores here from Chris on the year. Working from Mahomes, Mitch kind of let down by Ayuk. I mean, all the 49ers. Jameson Williams can't stop getting suspended, but even when he was on the field, he only put up 0.1 points. Drake London, 15. Ken Walker, 22. Josh Jacobs, 17. Mitch is still getting some points. We saw Darnold kind of dip a bit. Actually already played in the Thursday night game, so we'll touch on him a little later too. But Mahomes is really where Mitch just can't get any traction. Only 13 points, looking like a QB2, maybe low end. So Mitch falling to 3-4, and White Russian getting their second win of the season, 2-5. We had one more game in the Canadian division. It was Ev taking on the Captains, and the Captains ended up running away with this one, 151-111. Ev had a big game from Russell Wilson, 29.6 points. Bijan, 21. And George Kittle continuing, I think tight end 1 on the year, 15 points. But they were up against Baker, the Bomb, Mayfield, 40 points on the night in that shootout against Baltimore. Hunter Henry and Cade Otton with some really big games for the Captains as well. T. Higgins getting it done. So even though Devontae Smith had the stinker of 0.3 points, it really didn't affect it, as Sunday night the Captains took over the matchup, and that continued to propel them to the 6-1 victory. 2 points clear in the lead of the Canadian division, in case you haven't been following the standings. Told you we had some good games to go through this week. Week 7 was a blast, and let's hope we get just as good of matchups into Week 8 here. We'll move in to our player review from last week. We had some really good performances. I don't think it's going to be any surprise at the start who the top QBs are. In the lead, QB1 on the week for Week 7 was none other than Lamar Jackson, and then Baker Mayfield on his heels at number 2, 47 and 40 points respectively in that absolute gem of a game. Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Drake May rounding out the top 5. Surprise there. May putting up 28.59 points. Jared Goff, Marcus Mariota filling in for Jaden Daniels at number 7 on the week. Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, and Geno Smith to finish off the top 10. At running back, we had Jahmyr Gibbs, 30 points. He was the RB1. Rachaad White, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, all over 25 points. And then Derrick Henry, Javonte, Tank Bigsby sneaking into the top 10 at number 7. Breece Hall, Ken Walker, and Bijan, 21 or more points for all of the top 10 running backs. Honorable mention to Kareem Hunt, the only other running back to score over 20, finished at 11. Wide receivers, some big points as well for Amon-Ra, 21.2. He was the leading wide receiver on the week, helped Nav to the victory, but other than that, the wide receiver scoring, nobody went off. 20 points from Bateman, maybe a surprise. Although Stu maybe could have told you saw that coming. George Pickens with Russ, almost 20 points as well. Then Brian Thomas Jr. and Justin Jefferson. Metcalf, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Drake London, and Jamar Chase rounding out the top 10. 15 points for Chase, so kind of bang on for a wide receiver 10 finish. Maybe more points to come out of the position in Week 8. Run through tight ends really quickly because we did have some big points. Njoku, Jonnu Smith, and Mark Andrews, all 20 or better. Maybe Andrews has turned the corner, a couple touchdowns. Brock Bowers and Cade Otton, 4 and 5. Hunter Henry, Will Dissly, and George Kittle at number 8, all 15 points or greater. Zach Ertz and Kyle Pitts rounding out the top 10 for Week 7. We'll move over to the Commish's picks, see how we did. Well, we went 4 for 6 on the week. BK Whopper over Gronks was the pick. We missed that one. What a comeback again by the Gronks. And working from Mahomes, we didn't see the loss to White Russians coming. We had Nav over Banditos, the Captains over Ev, Hildy taking out Hanging with Hernandez and Italian Stallions. Maybe got lucky with that one, but we'll take it. 24 and 18 now on the season for our in-league picks. We'll see what Week 8 has in store coming up. Power rankings and the standings. A quick look and what did Week 7 do to us? Well, the Captains are 6-1, So are the Gronks. Those are your division leaders. In the Canadian division, we have Nav at 4-3, followed by the Banditos and Ev, all 4-3, but that's a points for spread between those two teams. Working from Mahomes at 3-4 and White Russian at 2-5. Behind the Gronks on the other side, we have Italian Stallions now in second. BK Whopper moving to third on points for, both those teams 4-3. Hildy at 3-4, and then James and Hanging with Hernandez rounding out the division at 1-6 each. The power rankings, well, they tell a very similar story. It is the captains and the Gronks on top. Points for separating those two, 1,001 to 952. Nav and Italian Stallions coming up in third and fourth, followed by Ev, Banditos, BK Whopper, Working from Mahomes, and then White Russian, Hildy, James, and Hanging with Hernandez to balance it out. Before we move into the waiver review, I want to stay on the topic of statistics, and let's go through our halfway recap. Well, 7 weeks in, we get a pretty good sample size of what's been going on at each position. I think everyone has seen some highs and some lows from enough players that I thought it would be fun to run through the average points per game as opposed to the total points, because there's been just a ton of injuries this year, some movements at the quarterback position. So points per game on average, 7 games in. I thought we had a big enough sample size. And let's look at the quarterback positions. No surprise, Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield at 1 and 2, averaging 33 points a game. Lamar just ahead by 0.1 more. Next, after one strong performance, see if he can keep this up through the year, but Russell Wilson, I know Ev is happy. He may have found a quarterback to give him a boost. Jordan Love at 28 points per game. Started off maybe a little bit slow, but he's had a couple of big ones. And Joe Burrow rounding out the top 5. 27 points per game for Burrow. So especially after the slow start, he's taken off. This is where it gets interesting. Much to James's chagrin, Joe Flacco is actually averaging 26 points per game. That's over 3 starts. And Anthony Richardson, meanwhile, who I think the Colts are going to continue to play. We can ask Mike, our resident expert, on that. Would they have a better chance with Flacco? Maybe, but he sits at QB6. Then it's Josh Allen and Jared Goff at 25 points per game each. And you'd like to think, as sustainable as that is, I think Josh Allen has a better chance of maybe exploding up into the top couple for the back half of the season. Jaden Daniels, though, 24.7 points a game. He's got to be the surprise at the QB position. And Geno Smith, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Fields averaging 24 points each for Smith and Hurts. Justin Fields down at 23, rounding out the top 12. There might be some moves. Well, there will be for a couple of these, but it'll be interesting to see if some of the bigger names, we haven't even talked about Mahomes yet, can kick it into gear for the second half of the year. The QB2s on the season, Sam Darnold. Now, this is including last night's game, so he was just over his average of 23 points per game, scoring 24.95 last night. Then Kyler, Caleb, Brock Purdy, and C.J. Stroud. Dak Prescott at 18 and Kirk Cousins at 19. Those are all 20 points per game or more. So after Darnold at 13, it was Kyler and Caleb and Brock Purdy, 22 points or better on average. Stroud, Prescott, 21 each, and Cousins at number 19, 20 points per game. Maybe a little bit disappointing based on what the projections were for Captain Kirk coming in. And rounding out the top 24 are Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr. So after his hot start, he's running a little cold. These are 19 points per game each. Patrick Mahomes comes in at QB 22. Aaron Rodgers and Bo Nix round out the top 24 quarterbacks. So couple of names that you'd like to hope might be moving on up back half of the year. And we like to think that top two tandem of Lamar and Baker, well, that's what's making it such an exciting race at the top of the standings as well. Got to be honest, Lamar probably has a better chance of staying hot the balance of the year, especially with some of the injuries at Tampa Bay. Okay, let's have a look at the running backs now. And leading off, this is no surprise, averaging 22.5 points per game through 7 weeks is Derrick Henry, the king. 10 points on the first week, so there might have been some valid concerns based on some of the off-season conjecture. But after that, 16, 29, 34, 16, 25, 24, like, he's been on fire. He might be unstoppable, and we know as the season progresses, Derrick Henry always gets better. Is this maybe a back-end James turnaround type of scenario? But he is outpacing the number 2 running back by almost 2 full points per game. And that running back missing quite a bit of time, but it's Joe Mixon. So this is basically 3 games worth, and which is actually a little bit lower because he, in this 4th game, was only 6.5 points. So Mixon averaging 20.8 on the season. Barkley, 20.6 in 3rd place, and he, again, just steady. One dud game, but he's also had his bye in there, so he should be primed to go for the Eagles for the balance of the year. Kenneth Walker and Kyren Williams. Kyren, 1 extra game in there, but it was a little bit better than his average. Walker, 19.9, and Kyren at 18.5. Alvin Kamara, then, couple of big games and a couple of stinkers, but averaging out 18 puts him good for 6th place. Jahmyr Gibbs, again, 1 big performance last week, kind of boosting the numbers, but still RB7 with 17.7 points. Jonathan Taylor, Kareem Hunt, and then David Montgomery. RB11, Bijan Robinson, 14.9 points, followed closely by Breece Hall at 14.7. It's been a lot more consistent, too, for these players. Maybe 1-2 down weeks, but very, very steady. James Cook as well, 14.6. He kicks off the RB2s in 13th place. Brian Robinson, Aaron Jones, and Isaiah Pacheco in his 2 starts, all averaging 14 points or higher. Coming in at 17 is Jordan Mason, filling in admirably for McCaffrey, who might be back soon. So Jordan Mason maybe only has a game or 2 left, but he's good for 13.7 on average. Chuba Hubbard, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, and then James Conner at 21, all 13 points or better on average. In Chuba and Swift's case, too, there were some really, really low numbers and then some higher performances to balance those out. Finishing off the RB2s is Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, and Devon Achane. This is where it does start to trail off a little bit. 12.6 for Pollard, 11.9 for Jacobs, and Achane 11.4. We'll throw in Najee and Rachaad White, averaging over 11 points per game as well. Rachaad White, 11.000 in 3 decimal scoring at RB26. Wide receivers through week 8 for a couple of teams, but this is for half of the season so far. And your first place on average, A.J. Brown. It was getting close, but a couple of big performances, 3 on the season, and he's now sitting at 19.46 points per game. Good for wide receiver 1. Nico Collins due back from injury, hopefully any time now, 2 weeks away, and hopefully not longer, but 18.1 on the season for Nico. Jamar Chase, 16.9, so a bit of a gap between the top 2 wide receivers. Justin Jefferson close behind Chase, 16.5 and 16.9 for those 2 stud receivers. This is a tough one at 5. Chris Godwin was having a very, very good season. Wide receiver 5 on the year with 16.1 points, and it, hopefully it doesn't continue into next season, but it sounds like the season's done for Godwin. It's a tough break. Malik Neighbors, Stu hitting on a couple of top 12 wide receivers in the draft. He's good for 16 points a game, and Amon-Ra St. Brown right behind him at 15. Cooper Kupp back in action and back to almost his average. It's a little skewed with only having played 3 games, but 25, 5, and 13. That goes for 14.7 on average for the 8th spot. Drake London, 14.4, right behind him. More consistent outside of his first game where he only put up 2.5. Jaden Reed, T. Higgins, and then Stu's other rookie, Brian Thomas, rounding up the top 12, all averaging better than 13 points per game, as was Rashee Rice through the first 4 games of this season. Good for 13.2, RIP, he will be missed. CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 14. We're into the 12 points per game now, and that carries down through Diggs, Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, surprisingly, in the top 24 wide receivers. Terry McLaurin as well at wide receiver 19. Scary Terry averaging 12.1 per game. Juwan Jennings, great waiver pickup by Hildy. He's sitting at wide receiver 20, 11.8 per game. And Mike Evans, not going to get a chance for improving on his 11.7 per game over the next couple, that's for sure. He'll be out. And Rashid Shaheed right behind him, 11.6. Probably still out for a few more weeks, I believe. Jamison Williams, who is out for different reasons, and DJ Moore, just below 11 points per game. That gives them wide receiver 23 and 24 positioning. And it goes down from there pretty quickly. Devontae Smith, Darnell Mooney, Puka Nacua, after really only 1 game outside of his first one. Devontae Adams, Debo, and then Josh Downs, the wide receiver 30. Those are your 10 points per game or better wide receivers on the season so far. Tight end has not been as exciting, but there is 1 or 2 standouts on the list. The top 2 tight ends are George Kittle, 16.9 points per game. He's really turned it on, especially the last 3 or 4 in a row. And then Brock Bowers, great pick by Hildy, wide receiver, tight end 2, but a good 2.5 points behind Kittle. So he's good for 14.5. Then it drops down to 12.1, and that's surprisingly Cole Kmet. A couple of dud games to start the season, but he's had 2 big ones to kind of boost his average as well. And then we're into the 10 points, just like that. Trey McBride, Dallas Goedert, David Njoku, and Tucker Kraft, who's actually in James's taxi squad as the tight end 7, averaging 10 points per game or better. Then we fall below. 9.8 is Jake Ferguson at tight end 8, Evan Ingram and Hunter Henry, followed by Kyle Pitts at tight end 11. That's your 9-point guys. Kelsey at tight end 12, not quite living up to the hype. Too much maybe Swift time, good for 8.7 points per game. Then it's Isaiah Likely and Jonnu Smith, Zach Ertz, Pat Freiermuth. Finally, we come to Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid, averaging 8.2 and 8.1 games respectively. And hopefully Cade Otton can continue his tight end 19 performance and improve on that. Last game, 18 big ones, but only 8 average on the year. The next 5 to round out the top 24 are 7 points or worse, and that's Noah Fant, Sam Laporta. A little bit too much invested in that one there. Tyler Conklin, Will Disley, and Colby Parkinson. Sorry for the PA hanging with Hernandez. It was low-hanging fruit. Those are your top 24 tight ends on the season. I know what everyone's been waiting for now. It's the kickers. Chris Boswell, number 1 kicker on the year, but bested in points per game by Brandon Aubrey and Austin Seibert. Those are your top 2 in average points per game. And as Mitch likes to point out, they would be like wide receiver 12 or something like that. The motion, the vote, whatever you want to call it, it did not pass. Sorry, guys. No flexing kickers. All right, now this is kind of interesting. We're going to go through the rookie rankings through the first 7 weeks of the season. And I know there's a few bets on this one, but number 1 is Jaden Daniels at 173 points and 24 points per game. These are the quarterbacks to start with. Caleb Williams is in second place at 134 points, but also averaging 22 points per game. So the first couple of picks in the draft proving to be worthy of that ranking, that's for sure. If we want to go down further into the quarterbacks, it's actually Bo Nix at QB3, 17.9 points per game. And we got to drop a little bit more to find Drake May. Obviously didn't get a chance, but the last 2 games, he's averaging 14 on the season, but you take away the 2 points in week 3 and the 0 in week 5, he's actually averaging 28 points per game. So 27.27 and 28.59 in the last 2. Drake May as the rookie QB4 only looks like he can improve on it from there. Brock Bowers is actually the best non-QB rookie this year. He's 101 points on the season so far, so he is putting in the work. Now that's 14.5 points per game, which is still second to Malik Neighbors, 16 points, and then we get Brian Thomas Jr., so the next 2 wide receivers on there, Stu has locked up, and I'm sure is pretty happy about that. It gets a bit skewed from there. We got Spencer Rattler, but that's just more so down to the couple games played at the quarterback position. He's averaging 12 points per game. And then it's Bucky Irving at position number 9. He's good for 10 points a game. We got to go drop down just a little bit more to find Xavier Worthy, Marvin Harrison, and then Ladd McConkey, all hovering around that 9 points per game mark. So the surprising thing here to me is that there hasn't really been a rookie come out of nowhere. Maybe that's Bucky Irving, but you want to look at the top ones. It's the QBs, no doubt are there. And then we got Neighbors, Bowers, and Brian Thomas. Harrison, a couple spots further down, but he's still in the top 12 rookie conversation. Xavier Worthy also picked to get a few big point weeks. The surprise here, I think, though, is maybe just down to a lack of opportunity, but Rome Odunze only averaging 6.5 points per game. Another pretty high draft pick there. And, we'll have to see if Nav's rookies can turn around for the back half of the season. Personally, I'm okay if they want to just kind of wait it out their rookie year and really explode next year, but I'm sure Nav has a varying opinion on that. I hope you guys kind of liked going a little bit deeper into the stats. It does make for a longer episode, but I figured it was an appropriate time of year to do so. We'll get back into the regularly programming now because there were a couple waiver pickups to go through, but we also had a couple of trades, and we'll go through those right now. All right, well, we'll start with the waiver pickups, and that was actually Mitch making a couple of moves, acquiring Marcus Mariota and Sterling Shepard. So both good opportunity pieces there. Mariota maybe not so much, but more insurance, as I do think Daniels is improving. But Sterling Shepard could be in line, at least for a couple of weeks, to earn himself a decent amount of targets from the number 2 QB on the year. Of course, that is due to the injuries at wide receiver Godwin and Evans. So we'll see if Sterling Shepard can pick up the slack and maybe help turn Mitch's season around. Was it for the waiver pickups? We did have, again, the injury bug hitting a bunch of teams. Tuesday, we saw Gus Edwards and Brandon Ayuk go on the IR from working from Mahomes' team. Banditos had to put Rashid Shaheed back onto the injured reserve, and it looks like Luke Musgrave could be out for some time. Nav making a move there. Gronks also had to put Juju on, but they got Cordero Patterson and Jonathan Taylor back, so probably some better news for the Gronks in that department. Ev, we talked about this tough one, putting Chris Godwin back down onto the IR, and then some more good news for the Gronks as they activated Puka Nacua. You want to talk about the rich getting richer with that one. Taylor and Nacua back for the Gronks. Deshaun Watson hitting the IR for White Russian, but Dallas Goedert coming off the IR. We'll see if those moves can make anything happen for Chris's team. But the meat of the activity this week came in the form of trades. It was the captains at the center of them. We moved some pieces around, giving up Michael Penix Jr. and Rashee Rice to White Russians, so looking forward to the future there. And in return, getting Geno back on a sweetheart salary, as well as Amari Cooper, Josh Allen's number one target in the offense. Let's hope the Bills turn around and get some big points there. And we weren't done. We had a couple of cap maneuvers to work around. So Alec Pierce on his way to hanging with Hernandez, getting a fourth-round draft pick back and taking on a bit of dead cap there. And then another trade back to the White Russians. Keaton Mitchell going the White Russians' way for a 5 and a 6, as well as a chunk of cut salary as well. So the moves have started. Will it be a domino effect into the back half of the season? We'll see if there's some other shuffling for position across the two divisions, with these moves maybe being the impetus for that. Fun and engaging. That's all we try to be every single week. We love the trades, so let's hope for a few more, even if they do possibly mean there's more competition at the top of the standings. All right. This was also maybe a bit of a surprise, but thank you to everyone who participated in the Bozo yet again. It was another success, and you want to slice it up. Oh, one of the bets maybe didn't quite hit, but we had to pivot at the last minute, and, it doesn't really matter who did what. The point is, it was back-to-back wins for the Bozo, and we're just hoping to keep that going into Week 8. Why not? You can't miss. Going to be hopefully a fun league event in the near future that we can take advantage of. Get a little pushback on the American Thanksgiving, but hopefully still anchoring that date in for the watch party, and maybe some more to come. Get your picks in for Week 8. It's honestly a can't-lose situation with the Bozo. You got myself putting up the 10 to get it done this week. Get those in before kickoff Sunday morning. We also had some good news on the commish locks, so thank you to Stu, who went 3 for 5 this week. Had the Colts minus 165 as the money line of the week, and the spread of the week was the Commanders minus 8, which they got there. Upset of the week, the Lions were plus 105. I don't know if it was an upset, but it hit. Leggett, though, the prop of the week, only had about 6 yards on an over of 42.5, and Kelsey needed 2 TDs, but he's been snake-bitten this year. Hey, 3 and 2 is pretty good on the week, and I like the ones he's got posted for us for Week 8. The 49ers minus 210 is your money line of the week. 49ers going up against... Why am I drawing a blank on that one? Cowboys. Oh, yeah, I guess minus 210 makes sense. I like the money line of the week. The Falcons, though, minus 2.5. They're back against the Bucks. We had a good game between these two the last time. So Falcons minus 2.5. Could be another shootout, and that's not a bad spread there. The Eagles are plus 115 this week, actually, against the Bengals. I think that's another high over-under, but I don't mind the upset call with the Eagles as plus favorites, plus 115 underdogs. Caleb Williams over 1.5 passing TDs. Obviously, as a Bears fan, or if you're on Hildy's team, you gotta like to see this one, because I do think against the Commanders, especially if Daniels is in, this could be some points scored for the Bears, at least in this one. So I like the Caleb over 1.5. And we love the long shot, obviously, this week. Amari Cooper, anytime TD, plus 162. Or, to make it spicier, the first TD scorer, Amari Cooper, plus 1,000. You know I'm going to be in on this one, guys. Get your bets in. Let's lock it in for the commish locks of the week. Well, if you've stuck around this long, we are now into the fantasy preview. And let's jump right into it with our game of the week. Another one with big playoff implications, this time at the top of the Canadian division. Can Nav close some ground on the captains? We'll take a look at the projections. Right now, Nav in the lead, 147 to 136. We'll see if that changes come game time, but on Nav's side, he's rolling out his top two QBs in Jalen Hurts and CJ Stroud. And then maybe in one of the last appearances, we kind of talked about this, but Jordan Mason coming into the running back room with Jahmyr Gibbs, who's coming off the big performance last week. The wide receiver room, this is where there could be some points scored this week. It's A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown, as well as Dontavian Wicks going in for Nav. Evan Ingram and David Njoku. Njoku actually could be the top target in Cleveland, so that does have the possibility for some big points. And he's rocking Jason Myers for Seattle in the kicker position. A well-deserved projected score of 147. Nav maybe finally has health back in his lineup and has got some bye weeks out of the way too. So he could start rolling. Currently 2 games behind the captains, who counter with Baker Mayfield. And as of now, Bo Nix is in line to get the start. Chuba Hubbard, Brian Robinson, and DeAndre Swift. We'll see if we can get some volume there. Maybe a similar situation. Chuba could be running out of time with Brooks being finally the window, I believe, was activated. Not sure if he's going to play this week, but hopefully Chuba gets the bulk of the touches. Amari Cooper will test out the shiny new toy for the captains, going up with T. Higgins and Devontae Smith, looking to bounce back from a pretty bad performance last week. And hopefully Baker's new favorite target in Cade Otton at the tight end position for the captains. And the number 1 kicker on the year, Chris Boswell. Let's hope the points continue for the Pittsburgh kicker. This could be right down to the wire. There's games Sunday night and Monday, I believe, for both teams. So another one where we saw the game of the week last week, fireworks right up until the end of the week, and this could be here too. Historical note, it's a 3-3 tie, captains versus Nav, the first 3 years of the league. Somebody's walking away with a winning record in this one. We'll finish with the last 2 in the Canadian division as our next previews. We have White Russian taking on the Banditos. Retooled White Russian squad, rolling out a total projection of 102 points, and the Banditos looking at their 144. Now, there was some impact to this matchup. We didn't have anything going for the game of the week last night, but Banditos did get 15.5 out of Justin Jefferson, so the line's already shifted. Chris and the White Russian team in slightly more of a hole after a good performance by JJ. We'll see if he can keep the game competitive in this one at least, but Banditos looking to bounce back and again in a shout with that number 2 spot in the Canadian division. They're going with Jared Goff and Brock Purdy at quarterback. Tank Bigsby and James Conner are the running backs. The 4-pack of wide receivers, we know Justin Jefferson played already. We got Zay Flowers, CeeDee Lamb, and Terry McLaurin with Cole Kmet, and then kicker Harrison Butker. Looking at the White Russian squad, we're going with Daniel Jones as the QB in the lineup for now. Najee, Devin Singletary, and Javonte Williams, maybe a resurging Javonte Williams, are the running backs. Keenan Allen, Romeo Doubs, and DK Metcalf, as well as Darnell Mooney. So 4 wide receivers going for Chris as well. Zach Ertz at the tight end position, and, well, historically, one of the best kickers in the game, Justin Tucker. We all know how good the kickers have been this year. White Russian could keep it competitive, but you got to take the Banditos, take the points. They're off to a hot start. And that actually reminds me, we did not make a pick for the game of the week. And everyone's probably thinking, where this is going. But I kind of got to say, I'm tipping my hat to Nav this week. You don't know how much this pains me to say. A couple of new moves. Looking excited. But I do think Nav, with his squad back to basically full strength. I know McCaffrey's still sitting there looming. But he's favored on the score sheet. It is going to be close. But I do think Nav comes away with the win in the game of the week, and the Banditos take the one over White Russian. Last one on the Canadian side. It's working for Mahomes at Ev. Now, this is where the standings flip. Ev, the last 4-3 team, working for Mahomes at 3-4. So you never know, a close game here. Now, Ev is projected just slightly to win, 4 points the margin, 130 to 126. And it might even be a come-from-behind win for Ev if the schedule plays out as the projections say. Mitch and working from Mahomes are going with Patrick Mahomes as well as Sam Darnold. We saw him get some points last night. Jaden Daniels and Russell Wilson countering on Ev's side of the ball. Now, looking at their running backs going head-to-head, it's J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, and Kenneth Walker going up against David Montgomery, Tony Pollard, and Bijan Robinson. Could be the bulk of the points scored in the lineups here as the wide receivers. Now, Mitch is going Drake London. Tank Dell hasn't been very impressive with Nico out of the lineup. And then Sterling Shepard, we talked about him on the waiver portion. Jacoby Myers and Jalen Waddle for Ev. The good news is Waddle has Tua back. Tyreek seemed happy. And then Ev's 2-pack of tight ends, Kelsey and the number 1 tight end, Kittle, going up against Mark Andrews on Mitch's side. And Mitch just hopes those touchdowns weren't a fluke last week. Keep them coming. Jake Bates for Mitch, Tyler Bass for Ev are the kickers. And sorry, Mitch, we got to take Ev with the points on this one too. It's going to be close though, but I do think all of the 4-3 teams in the Canadian division take the win and just make that division that much more interesting at the top of the standings. We'll see how the games play out. Moving over to the USA side, and at the bottom of the standings, 1-6, this is maybe the bye to the toilet bowl final on the line. It's James taking on Hanging with Hernandez. Now, on paper, it's not even close. James is running away with an almost 52-point spread, 130 to 78. It's Dak Prescott, Anthony Richardson up against Joe Burrow. We talked about Henry leading the way. Kamara with a top almost 12 performance on the season, and Rachaad White right there as well. Cooper Kupp looked good, back to his tricks last night. Wan'Dale Robinson and Khalil Shakir round out James's wide receiver room, and then Dalton Kincaid and Cam Little kicking the balls for Jacksonville on James's team. Hanging with Hernandez have a couple pieces. We've seen Lockett have a few good games. I can't remember if JSN's status is in question this week or not, but Lockett could put some points up. Jonnu Smith is a top 2 tight end last week, I believe. Foster Moreau could always be good for a touchdown. And in the unheard of triple tight end attack, Sam Laporta, tight end 23 or whatever he is this year, he's just begging for a few more targets every game. Let's see if the 3 tight ends from Hanging with Hernandez, honorable mention to Greg Dortch, Ray McLeod, Jeremy McNichols, and Ty Johnson completing their roster. Kaimi Fairbairn kicking the balls. Take James in this one, though. Here's where it gets interesting. We'll go down to BK Whopper, looking to maybe re-secure second place, currently tied, but third on points for. He's taken on Hildy. Hildy with the win last week, getting his second of the year. And apologies, sorry, Hildy, you're sitting at 3-4. This game could again have some implications if Hildy can come up with the win. But he's down by over 24 points, it looks like. 152 to 128 are the projections. And we had some scores in this one as well last night. BK Whopper getting 33 points combined. Kyron had a good game with 20. Aaron Jones only put up 10, and Jordan Addison just 3. So the projections have shifted, and that gap is now closed to just 16 points between the two teams. So who knows? We've got to play the games. But on Hildy's side, he has Justin Herbert and Caleb Williams going for him. Talked about the Chicago-Washington game. Could be some big points. And Caleb Williams, well, we know Stu's got him for over 1.5 touchdowns. That's almost a lock. Kareem Hunt still getting touches for KC and Alexander Madison. The running backs on BK, Aaron Jones and Kyron Williams, they've already played. So can Hildy get 30 points out of his RBs as well to keep this one close? Who knows? Hildy's going with Jamar Chase and Keon Coleman and DJ Moore. So again, the potential, I mean, we've seen Coleman kind of coming on. He's only projected for 7, but a touchdown and 1 or 2 big plays could change that. Brock Bowers, big win there. And Hildy, this is where you might be chasing this one. Going for the big points with Will Dissly again in that Chargers stack. Double tight end set for him. Blake Groupie kicking the balls. Well, we talked about BK Whopper on the other side. They're RBs, but they still got Josh Allen going and Jordan Love, and this could be where the difference is. Herbert and Williams can put up big points. I think we've come to expect it now from Allen and Love. The wide receivers, Addison, bit of a dud. He's already played, but Stephon Diggs, George Pickens, and Jaden Reed can all put up some big numbers and should, to give BK Whopper the edge. Jake Ferguson and Greg Zuerlein rounding out the starting lineup for the boys over there. I still like BK in this one, even though it is a lot closer. But I think the quarterbacks are going to make the difference. Take the Whoppers over Hildy, which then puts the pressure on the last U.S. division game. So the other 4-3 team, that is the Italian Stallions, they're looking to pull back the Gronks. Again, a couple of two-game leads on either side of the divisions. Gronks with that big come-from-behind win last week to match the captains at 6-1 and are on a 6-game winning streak. Lost the first one. Have not looked back. Now, Kyler and Lamar. Lamar, big points. Kyler, he's looked like he is beatable this week. A little bit up and down. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Stu's probably happy, I think, with how last night went. Got the 36 points from Stafford's 4 touchdowns and still has Cousins yet to go. I'm not going to lie, that may have affected my decision on this game, but we'll finish the lineups. Staying with Stu, Achane, Barkley, and Mixon are the running backs, and kind of like the other matchup we talked about earlier where a lot of running back points could be scored. On the Gronk side, they're rolling with Chubb again, the feel-good story that is. James Cook, Breece Hall, and fresh off the IR, Jonathan Taylor. There could be 100 points aside scored by the running backs. I'm not even joking. And then, Stu's only rolling out the top 2 rookie wide receivers in Neighbors and Thomas, who also happen to be top 12 wide receivers, and Garrett Wilson. But Tyreek Hill has his quarterback back, and the surprise play of Puka Nacua already off to 14.5 points. It's given the Gronks a little bit more, but they were favored going into it. The tables have actually flipped. Stu is now 180 to 172 projected to win. Trey McBride for Stu, Pat Fryermuth for the Gronks, and Jake Elliott for Stu, Young Wei Koo for the Gronks. If Stafford doesn't throw 4 touchdowns, I'm not going to lie, I probably look at this and say the Gronks are going to win. But let's go, Stu. Hold them back. Roll to the victory. That's right. We're picking Stu over the Gronks. That's the bonus of doing the pod on a Friday. You got a little bit more information, and that's how we're calling this one. Well, thanks for sticking around. Hope you guys enjoyed the Week 7 mid-year review. I know it got me more fired up to not just play this week's games, but hopefully see some of these performers maintain their top positions, or, like we touched on too, some of the big names that are down in those 20-ish positions in the standings. Still got another half a season to go. Lots of time left. Lots of movement. Hey, even 1-6 isn't necessarily out of the race. Just look at the Gronks. 6 in a row. Just like that. That could happen to anybody. Until next time, I'm Steve. Thanks for listening. Good luck this week.